First of all, I would like to thank very much Miss Vola and Professor Angelini who invited me, because it's an honor to be among the great Italian specialists of neuromuscular disorders. And my contribution will be modest, because the title is ambitious, but I will show you some preliminary data, because when Professor Angelini asked me to make a talk, I proposed to make an overview of the sarcoglycan patients in Paris, and this is a large amount of work, so we started to collect the data, and it's an ongoing study, and when we see what we did with Claudio a few years ago, it takes a lot of time, full time to collect the data, to make the correlation, so it's just a start. First of all, I would like to come back in a few slides on the historical aspect of sarcoglycanopathy, because this is a disease in which we are much interested in France also, because of all this history. It was discovered first in North Africa, in the team of Professor Ben Hamida in Tunis, and at this period there was a narrow collaboration with Michel Fardot and Fernando Tomé laboratory, and more than 20 years ago, the deficiency in alpha-sarcoglycan, which was called at this period adaline, because it was an Arabic term for muscle, which is now changed. So it was discovered and reported in this Princess paper in collaboration with the Japanese group. And later on, it was an era also where genetic was not like today with the next generation sequencing. It was still era of linkage analysis, and all the 4 sarcoglycanopathies has been identified by linkage. And thereafter, there was an improvement in the clinical knowledge of these rare disorders and on the frequency of these disorders. But I think that today it's probably important to continue to work on the clinical field of this disease, because I realize that we don't know exactly the frequency in every country, the proportion of these patients, and probably we can learn more about the correlation between the genotype and phenotype. And I will present you here a work which has been done by Professor Aymar in the alpha-sarcoglycan patients from Paris. The interest of this work was to describe the phenotype of these patients and to emphasize that there were two groups, severe and milder patients. The clinical features are now well known. The patient presents, most of them, with proximal muscle weakness, affecting upper limbs and lower limbs, with in many cases calf hypertrophy, like in dystrophinopathies, and heart can be affected. But in alpha-sarcoglycanopathies, in this series, there was no heart involvement, and this is now confirmed that heart involvement is quite rare in this sarcoglycanopathy. There is no facial involvement, or very rarely dysphagia or bulbar weakness, and no neuropsychological trouble when we compare, for example, with dystrophinopathy. So this is also an important aspect of this disease. In this paper, pictures of patients were presented, and you can see here the typical calf hypertrophy, scapular winging, which is not specific of this disease, but of many limb-girdle muscle dystrophies. And CT scan is also important to show the pattern of muscle involvement, and you can see here fatty replacement in the thigh, in the anterior and posterior part of the thigh. And you can see here that this is different, for example, from what we see in dystrophinopathies, where it's much more the quadriceps which are involved, and in sarcoglycanopathies you have also posterior involvement. So again, we could clearly confirm that some patients present with severe phenotype, mimicking Duchenne dystrophies, and it was the initial description of this patient. And one of the questions which was raised in the initial description of Benabida was that you had also girls with Duchenne-like myopathy, and of course dystrophin could not explain this. So in alpha sarcoglycanopathies, you have young patients with Duchenne phenotype, who can be either boys or girls. But we can also have patients with milder phenotype, with mild muscle weakness, and some of them have pseudo-metabolic manifestations. This was examples of two sisters with exercise pain, muscle pain during exercise, occurring after a few minutes of exercise. And this patient had very high CK levels. When you have this kind of symptoms, you can evoke a metabolic myopathy, but the diagnosis can be made here in the muscle biopsy with immunohistochemical analysis. After another important point was the fact that we could correlate roughly in this study the level of sarcoglycan expression and the severity of the disease. In this graph, you can see the patient with severe deficiency of protein and patient with less severe deficiency that you can assess with histochemical analysis and also with Western blot. And when you correlate with the Walton scale, which is a scale evaluating the ambulatory deficiency, patients who are wheelchair bound very early, these patients have a severe reduction of immunohistochemical reaction, and patients who are still ambulatory after many years have residual protein activity. This kind of correlation has been also demonstrated in dystrophinopathies, and I think this is still important. This shows that it's still important to analyze the muscle biopsy, possibly also in the context of prognostic questions. And concerning the mutations, the genotype-phenotype correlation, there was also some phenotype-genotype correlations. Of course, it's always difficult to make this kind of correlation because you have many different mutations, and in particular in this patient with sarcoglycanopathies, there were many different mutations. But again, the mutations which could be assessed as very deleterious, the new mutations, were associated with the most severe clinical involvement, and you see again that the patients who are wheelchair bound quite early have new mutations, and the other patients have variable course. Some of them with a milder course, with either missense mutations or heterozygous for null and missense mutations. So this work was done in 1997, so it's quite old. And recently we focus our interest on the beta sarcoglycanopathies with the work of Claudio. And another work that we started to do is to collect now the data from all the Paris area patients. So we started to do this work with a colleague, Dr. Raquel Costa, who is working in our group since 2 years, but we started this work a few months ago only. And the next aim is to collect also the data from the pediatric unit in order to have a global idea of the frequency of these disorders in Paris. So at this point, we collected 63 patients, data from 360 patients followed in Pitié-Salpêtrière, 39 women and 24 men. As you can see, majority of the patients, 32, were affected with alpha sarcoglycanopathy, with a mean age of 34 years. And just after, the gamma sarcoglycanopathies, 27 patients, more women than men, I don't understand well why, with a mean age of 30 years. And clearly, the patients with beta sarcoglycanopathies are much rarer. We knew this, but it's confirmation, with only 4 patients in more than 20 years of diagnostic, and no patient with delta sarcoglycanopathy. The age at onset of the patients was quite the same, a little earlier for the alpha and gamma sarcoglycanopathies, around between 6 and 7 years, a little older but quite similar with beta sarcoglycanopathy. And a few slides now to give you some results about the clinical severity of these patients. We can divide the patient between wheelchair-bound patients and patients who are still walking without aid at adult age. What can we see? In fact, in both alpha and gamma sarcoglycanopathy, the majority of the patients have a severe muscle weakness, with approximately 2/3 who need a wheelchair. At the mean age of wheelchair is 19 years, and 1/3 of the patients still walk after the age of 18 years. For the beta sarcoglycanopathy, all the patients, there is a mistake. All the patients we follow, I don't know why this is true, all the patients we follow are ambulatory, and this is probably explained by the fact that the mutations that we found in Paris are mild mutations. According to the cardiac involvement, clearly the patient with alpha sarcoglycanopathy have very few cardiac involvement. Only 2 on 32 patients have a cardiomyopathy. By contrast, in the gamma sarcoglycanopathy, 1/3 of the patients have cardiomyopathy. For some patients, unfortunately, we don't have the data because it's again a retrospective analysis. And the beta also may have cardiomyopathy. 2 on 4 have cardiomyopathy needing treatment. So clearly, we need to be very cautious with alpha and beta sarcoglycanopathy patients. For the respiratory involvement, in our cohort, 1/3 of the alpha patients with alpha sarcoglycanopathy needed non-invasive ventilation with a mean age of ventilation of 32 years. And 6, so a little less in the gamma sarcoglycanopathy groups, needed ventilatory assistance, but earlier than in alpha patients. And no patient with beta sarcoglycanopathy needed assisted ventilation. Among our patients, of course, we didn't follow all the patients, so there is a lack of information for some of them, but we are aware of deaths in 4 patients, all with gamma sarcoglycanopathy, at the mean age of 30 years, and for the other group, no patient died to our knowledge. The genetic analysis has been done in Paris by France Louturc in Cochin Hospital. We are working on this data because it's now we have to update the results because some of the patients have been genotyped many years ago. So I just present you the main mutations that we observe. In the alpha sarcoglycanopathy, there was quite a great number of mutations. This mutation, R77C, was present in 9 cases, but in heterozygous states. And for the other patients, we have very different mutations. And most importantly, for the gamma sarcoglycanopathy groups, 2 mutations in the same part of the gene, the del 521T and 25T, were present in homozygous state. And this is probably explained by the fact that many of the patients that we follow are from North Africa with this founding mutation. So a great number of gamma sarcoglycanopathy patients are from Algeria, Tunisia, of Morocco, in Paris area. So this is a more homogeneous group. So this is where we are at this point, and we need to work more to be able to make the same kind of analysis we have done for the beta-sarcoglycanopathies, to be able to review the muscle biopsy, to see the level of protein deficiency, to try to make correlation, and I think it will be interesting to have a better insight on this correlation in the whole group of the patient. So clearly, at this point, we can confirm that alpha and gamma sarcoglycanopathies are far most frequent than the other groups, and we have a little more patients with alpha sarcoglycanopathy. 2/3 of the patients have a severe form of the disease, Duchenne-like form, and 1/3 could be classified are milder, but of course they can have severe motor weakness. The cardiac involvement is very rare in alpha sarcoglycanopathy. This is something which is well known, but we confirm this. And in gamma, it was observed in 1/3 of the patients. And according to respiratory insufficiency, we found more patients with needing assisted ventilation in alpha sarcoglycanopathies, which could be surprising if we consider that gamma are more severe, but the cohort is quite small, so probably it's the same. And the future goals are now to extend this cohort and in the following months to have more data in all the population, including the pediatric population, because the patients we see are adults now, to search for correlation between mutations and protein deficiency and clinical symptoms. And I think that this is even more important now, because we see that we are probably now in a context of new treatment. There are new therapeutic options. You know very well that some clinical trials, some gene therapy trials have been done in sarcoglycanopathies. This kind of trials are very difficult to perform, with even if some results shows an improvement of the production of sarcoglycans. There is no clinical benefit at this point, and the new possibilities which are offered with the small molecules and non-viral gene therapy are very important, and I think that like in other muscle disease, where for which we have therapeutic trial, it will be probably important to have a better knowledge of the natural history of these patients. And the question of this natural history is difficult, because you can do retrospective work like we do, but we probably need prospective natural history to have better criteria, more accurate criteria. And the question I would raise, should we launch a multicentric natural history trial, because the patients are quite rare. If you want to have a natural history of subgroups of patients with gamma and alpha sarcoglycan, you need a quite important number, and it could be one project, European project or French-Italian project to do such a natural history trial, which is very time consuming, so we have to be aware that it's a lot of work, and, but maybe it's important to be able to analyze the results of future treatment. So I would like just to acknowledge again Ms. Vola, Professor Angelini, and Claudio Simplicini and Professor Pegoraro, with whom we collaborate since a few years, and like this man, we try to go in the same direction to the treatment of sarcoglycanopathies. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Laforêt, for your very clear, practical presentation. Pensavamo di fare adesso delle domande per il professor Laforêt e dopo andare avanti con le altre comunicazioni. C'è qualche domanda?
Do you have an idea of is your genetic background? You having very many Arabs, you know, from Tunisia. What is the percent of population come from Tunisia? What is the percent that comes from French, Germany?
This is what I told that for the gamma, for the alpha, it's more. I have not the exact data. We have to provide this, but for the gamma sarcoidopaths, maybe 2/3 of the patients, even more, are from North Africa. So there are Tunisian, Moroccan, Algerian patients living in Paris area. So this is the same population that it was described in North Africa. And for the alpha, you have Caucasian, most Caucasian patients, I think. I have to check this and the beta. You have patient from two patients with a mutation from Sepharad Jews, which is also found in North Africa. So yes, that's it.
Thanks. There are other questions?
Yes. Pascal, you didn't find any delta sarcoglycan mutation, you only found 4 beta sarcoglycan mutation. There is a bias of testing or not testing some region of these genes, or you know that they were tested in all patients, these genes.
No, I think that, again, what I present you is just a clinical file. So we tried the clinical file of patients with identified sarcoglycanopathies, but probably now we have to go back to several patients who have deficiency in protein deficiency. Frequently you have alpha, gamma deficiency, and for some of these patients during years and years we didn't find because we start to analyze the gamma gene, after that the alpha, so it takes years and years, but now it's a new era, and we can probably do this work to search for the all the data and to look back, and maybe we will find data. Right. But this is a work we need to do with a geneticist, and to go back to the undiagnosed patients. Yes.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, Pascal, just a short one. What about the very mild phenotype with CK increase or a very minimal symptomatic aspect? How many are the patients? What percentage about your population?
Again, the work is, I have not the results in mind, so what I remember is that it was mainly for the alpha sarcoglycanopathies. We found some patients coming from exercise intolerance with high CK levels. The diagnostic workup was searching for a metabolic disease. It was negative. We made the biopsy and we found deficiency in sarcoglycan. So in some patients, but maybe 5-6 patients in the cohort, we had these phenotypes.
Okay. Thank you very much.